Every week we do a Q&A with interesting and accomplished members of the adaptive community to find how they persevered, how they innovated, how they built communities, and how they found solutions. Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast. Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast. Today we have Connor Hogan on, who competed in 2018 in Pyeongchang at his first Paralympics, is hoping to compete in Beijing in March. He is from the skiing hotbed of Foxborough, Massachusetts. We're going to have to get into that. Connor, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm excited.
This is awesome. Yeah, Foxborough, Mass. Foxborough, Mass. Not a lot of mountains around Foxborough, Mass.
Not really.
They have a football team there. They have a football team, but not a lot of skiing. So how did this happen?
So I actually grew up skiing in Southern Vermont. My parents were both ski instructors at a small ski area in Southern Vermont called Bromley. And it was every weekend in the winter, we would be in Vermont at my grandmother's house, and they would be working and teaching. And I was in the kids center. And, by the age of 5, I was on the hill skiing every weekend when we were there. So it was kind of one of those things where I was either going to love it or I was going to hate it. And there was no in between. I love, it became one of those things where I was normal when I skied, and it wasn't, oh, you're the disabled kid. So that's why I fell in love with it. And that's how the whole thing came to be. So
can you describe, because I was asking you this before we went on, what your class is specifically and how you fit into that class?
So 9-1 it's disability that affects half of your body. So, and it's a little more than a 9-2. So my disability affects my leg from my hip down and affects my arm, my right arm as well. And that's a little different than like a 9-2, where it's more below the knee and arm than above the knee and arm. So my whole right leg is affected, as where a 9-2 would more have a lower leg issue.
And so that was from a stroke in the womb, right? And cerebral palsy as a result, is that right?
Yeah. So I had a stroke in utero. And when I was about a year to 18 months old, my parents really started to question why I wasn't walking and why I wasn't crawling. I remember stories from when I was a kid where I would just roll around the house. And
roll around like barrel roll, like log roll.
Like I would just roll places. And finally my mother was like, asked my pediatrician about it. And, a few days later we're at Children's Hospital Boston, and I get diagnosed with CP. And it, it never, I always want to think that it never affected my life, but I also at the same time don't think I would be where I am today without it. So it's always one of those things where I'm like, wait, I love where I am today, so I wouldn't want it any other way.
You said that skiing was a big equalizer for you. What were other sports like?
So, I was the kid that tried every sport. I played pee-wee soccer. I played Little League baseball. I played pee-wee soccer. And I was always the kid that wasn't fast enough, couldn't throw the ball, couldn't catch the ball. I was always the underdog when it came to certain things, and I always felt left out. And even when it came to sports and gym, like I couldn't climb the rope, or I couldn't shoot a basketball. And ski racing was that place where I could always go as a kid, and I felt accepted, and I felt the same, and I had the same struggles that every other kid had on the hill, and I could get involved in ways that I couldn't other places. And for a long time I ski raced able-bodied, and people either knew I had a disability and didn't care, or didn't know I had a disability and it didn't affect them. So that's,
What did that mean when you started getting into skiing then? What did that mean for you emotionally? Was there a metamorphosis or anything? Or
it always was my safe space. And I would spend 5 days a week at home being made fun of and being told that I wasn't good enough and bullied and all those things that came with a disability that I didn't love. And the weekends were my time to be free, my time to be myself, my time to be open and like, and some of my closest friendships to this day are people that I made skiing because I could be open and be myself with them and not have to hide myself because of my disability.
How did you end up getting into able-bodied racing? Did you know anything about the Paralympics?
No, so the whole Paralympic thing. So my ski racing journey started at 7 or 8. I'm still a little fuzzy on the date on the year, but my mother came home from work one afternoon and came up to me and said, "Hey, do you want to go try a race clinic?" And so we went down to Wyndham, New York, down to ASF and tried racing for the first time, and I kind of fell in love with it from there. Um, and it kind of dwarfed into, I raced Diana Golden races for a long time, and then I wanted to do more racing, so I raced with the able body program at Bromley. And then I remember watching, there was a 2008, it was before NBC did any real broadcasting of the games at all. And there was a documentary they did about the 2008 Summer Games in Beijing, which ironic that we're going back to Beijing, but where one of a wounded warrior that had come to a wounded warrior weekend at Bromley ran the 100 meters in Beijing. And I remember watching this documentary sitting in Vermont, and I looked at my grandmother and my mom, and I said, "I'm going to be a Paralympian."
And how
And
old were you?
I was probably 12. I was 12 or yeah. It was 2000. I was 11. So yeah, I was 11. And I just remember my grandmother and my mother being like, "Are you crazy? Like this is where it's gonna be." And and I'm so happy to be where I am now that like I look back on those moments, and every 4 years when it comes around, I start to think back to that moment where I was like, I'm going to the Paralympics and I don't care what I need to do to get there. That it it reminisces and it brings up a lot of good memories from being a young kid.
So let me make sure I get this right. So there was a wounded warrior who had come to Bromley to learn how to ski.
Yep.
And then ran the 100 meters in Beijing in 2008. And that's when you said, "This is what I'm doing." And
Yeah.
but you hadn't really, I mean, you said you had done some Diana Golden races, who was, I actually saw Diana at a ski race at Burke the year before my accident. She was the only person with a disability who showed up at this race, one-legged skier, and was an amazing athlete, really, and sort of in a lot of ways the model of the athlete that you want to. She's like, "Look, I don't have time for excuses. I'm gonna fall. I'm gonna get back up. I'm chasing you." And you're like, "Yeah, I know you're chasing me. Okay." But then did you get into Paralympic stuff after making this statement in 2008? How did that work?
Yeah. So I had pretty much done Diana Golden races since probably 6 or 7, and I'd done more and more every year. And then the winter of 2008, 2009, I won fastest junior in the East, which was like a Diana Golden thing at the time. And it was one of the things was to go to the race clinic at Ski Spec out in Breck. And so I went out there in 2009 as a 12-year-old, and it was at the point where you couldn't race in an international race until you were 13. And I raced up a year and raced at 12 in my first NORAMs in Copper in the lead up to the Vancouver Games that year. And that was like my first real experience with the next level of Paralympic ski racing. That was going on 13 years ago, which is shocking to me that I've now been at racing internationally for 13 years or 12 or 13 years of my life now. So
And so you were only 12 then. And so
yeah.
you had to, you were, how did you finagle your way into the race if you weren't supposed to
So
race?
there was a rule where you could race up and you had to get like signed off by certain people, and certain people that sign off and say, yeah, you can race in this race. And so that was my first real experience, and that was the end of like, that was the year that like everybody went to Vancouver, and I just remember being there, and that was my first time meeting Ralph and all those guys, and being like awestruck that this was happening and I was there, and that, and it's changed a lot in 12 years. And I think back on it a lot now, and I'm like, I've helped to grow this sport in ways that I never thought I would. And it just makes me feel good about like how far it's come in so little time.
Well, there's a real responsibility for every athlete. I mean, especially on the Paralympic side, I think it's one of the great things is that you as an athlete are responsible for pushing the sport forward. You can't just rely on the organizers. But was that a different race for you, like a different level of like a bigger mountain, steeper terrain, longer race, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so it was my second trip out west. My first trip was we did a family ski trip out to Snowbird, Utah, like 2 years beforehand, and that was my first like big ski trip, and it ended with me scraping my face up on a powder day. Which, but, and it was a bigger race. It was a different experience. It was a games year where there were probably 75 or 80 people entered in this NORAM. If I think back now and think about it, just that there was that many people in this NORAM. I mean, I just got back from St. Moritz earlier today, actually, and we were talking about how you can always tell when it's a games year because there's so many more people entered in races. So
Right. A lot of these countries and a lot of these people don't necessarily have the budgets to be able to go to the races every single year. But when it's a games year, everybody goes to all the races.
exactly. So I just remember it being like, okay, wow, this is the experience I'm having. Like, I'm ski racing against people that have won Paralympic medals and are going to win Paralympic medals, and it's just one of those experiences where I was more awestruck than anything. And that was, I go to a NORAM now, and I'm the person that everybody looks up to, and it's a weird, I don't know, weird isn't the right word. It's a different experience for me now thinking back on it. Like, that was me at a younger age.
Do you feel like that person now? Do you feel like the people that you looked up to, that you were awestruck? Do you feel like a Ralph? Do you feel like even like a Laurie Stevens, or those kinds of people who are Tyler, who's there back then?
Yeah.
CDY. I mean, you had a bunch of people who had won a bunch of medals, right?
Yeah, no, and I do, and I still look up to those guys. I still look up to Tyler. I still look up to CDY on a regular basis, and think that like that is what I want. I mean, my goal is Super G or downhill gold in a games, and the other goal I want is that I want the downhill title. I want the downhill season title. That was another one of my big ski racing goals that I want to accomplish before I retire.
How do these work when you set a goal like that, and you say, because you're talking about gold medal at the Paralympics, you're talking about a downhill crystal globe, so that's for the season long. When you set those goals, how do you go about achieving that, and how do you go about reminding yourself of that goal?
So the both of those. So I work out in a gym with some training staff here on the east, in just outside of Foxborough in Norwood, and right after I started working out there the year after the game. So 2019, the summer of 2019, I started working out there. And one of the things that I gave them probably pretty soon after I started working out there was I gave them one of my Paralympic bibs from the games in Pyeongchang, and we took a Sharpie in gold. It was a gold Sharpie, and we wrote Paralympic gold on the back and then crystal globe on the back, and we hung it in the gym. And every day when I leave the gym, I have to walk by it because that's the only way out of the gym. And to this day, Jason and Cameron, like, that's your dream right there on the wall. Like, you can't, like, I can't go a day when I'm at the gym working out, not thinking about it because it is right there. And going to Pyeongchang was a surprise to me. I got reclassified and didn't really know how my season was going to go, and was kind of felt like I was at a point where 2022 was going to be my first games. I was going to be my shot. And I did get to go to Pyeongchang. I unfortunately suffered a concussion before the first run of the slalom. I skied the first run of the slalom, threw up in the finish line. It's all, it's a whole thing. But it was, I took that as the, I've gone to a games, I got to experience the games. This games is, I'm focused on what I want. And there's a Bill Belichick motto that I kind of live to this day, and it's take no days off. And I will say it's one of the bad habits I get into is where I don't take enough days off sometimes. There was one point this summer I went 43 days doing some kind of workout every day, and I finally hit a wall and I was like, I need a day off. And so it's one of those things where you have to balance everything to get where you want.
So with hemiplegia, with your right side being affected, both the arm and the leg, what is it that you have to work on in the gym? What makes you a better skier?
So I do a lot of the same exercises that any skier would do: squats, deadlifts, bench press, all that kind of stuff. But I probably, I do a lot more agility. I do a lot more right-legged balance stuff. I do a lot more, those kind of things to try to build the strength in that strength in that leg and the ability to have the quick twitch that it involves to be a ski racer at the next, to be the best in the world. So
what does agility look like? Can you give us an example of what you might do?
So it kind of depends on the day, but some days we'll do a lot of we'll do ladder drills. We'll do quick feet, double jumps, those kind of things. And then other days we'll do so the gym that I work out at is a big football gym and a big baseball gym. And so there's a lot of D1 recruits that work out there, and high school guys that are going to go on to be D1 recruits. And so I do one of the things that I've done differently than I think a lot of ski racers out there is I've done a lot of football drills. We do cone drills on a regular basis. We'll do drills where I'm getting, rubber lacrosse balls thrown at me, and I have to catch them while we're running certain drills. So it's a different. It took me a long time to find a place that I felt comfortable working out at, and a place that I felt like I could do, we could change things up, and we're always trying to find new and better ways to do something. So.
Okay, so you're saying that at some point they are throwing lacrosse balls at you, which lacrosse balls are rubber, but they are really hard.
Yes.
and hurt a lot.
But they're training lacrosse balls.
You were always the
little
kid.
softer.
You said you were the kid who couldn't catch back in the back in the day. That's why skiing was appealing. So skiing's appealing. Now you're out training and they're throwing lacrosse balls at you. How does that work? Does it work
I will say
well?
I've gotten better at catching and than I was as an 8-year-old kid, but still once in a while I'll miss with the lacrosse ball, and it will hurt. I will have some bruises every once in a while from lacrosse ball coming. And I mean, they're training lacrosse balls, so they're like the air filled ones, but still they're pretty painful when you're tossing them and trying to catch them and all those things. But yeah, no, it's just a, it's a different way of looking at the bigger picture. And I think one of the things that ski racing as a sport has developed so much since I joined it. And honestly, ski racing when I was a kid was kind of the start of, it was like the end of the first generation of shape skis and the beginning of like, let's see where we can push the boundaries of ski technology. And I think to a certain extent now it's skis have been pushed to a certain extent. Now we're at the point where we have to find the way to be the fastest, be in the best shape, be the most athletic, be the the best aerobic person to go out and perform on a day in and day out basis. And we've tried a lot, we've changed a lot of things. So it's just interesting to see how things have progressed.
Definitely. So you ski with 2 skis and 2 poles. I mean, one side of your body is affected, but 2 skis, 2 poles, if you're at the bottom, or you said even when you were racing, some kids didn't even know that you had a disability. What do you need to do race day to be able to perform at your best, to minimize the spasticity that might well be working against you?
Yeah, so my race day kind of starts, I'll probably say earlier than most guys, especially able-bodied guys, but I'll get up, 2.5 hours before we have to get our boots on, and I'll do some agility stuff, some quick feet, some movement of all the joints to kind of loosen things up. Then I'll go massage stick, roll, get on the lacrosse ball, kind of loosen up the tight spots. And then that's even before I put my boots on. And then, we'll put my boots on, I'll go do some more skiing drills, and then we'll do another warm up before the race starts. So it's taken a long time to figure out that like warm up routine to make sure that I was in the best place possible to get what I needed out of it.
How is it now? Because we talked with Spencer a couple of weeks ago, who actually is a 9-2, right? So you guys are in the same class, but in a bifurcated class, right? So you're a 1, he's a 2, but it's in that class that is affected on one side of your body, both arm and legs. And he was talking about similar kinds of things like the quick feet beforehand. Is it helpful to have a teammate who's in a similar situation to be able to, do some trial and error?
Yeah, I think we have a really great staff behind us that will listen to us and will help us kind of work through each thing that we need. And it has been a lot of trial and error. I mean, I think both me and Spencer have gone through a lot of different iterations of what our warm-up is, and it's been over they can build up over years and years and years to perfect what that warm-up is. I would say, I mean, I still don't think to this day my warm-up's perfect. Don't get me wrong, it's 100% not perfect, but I think there's definitely an iteration. You have to change things on a regular basis to see what work. I mean, we have a motto in my household, and it's you have to try something to see if it works. Like, you can't just be like, so I'm a cyclist in the summer. I go ride my bike every day, and we'll change stems on my road bike, and be like, oh, is that better or is that worse than it was yesterday? Like, you can't just talk about it. You have to try it. And if you don't try it, then you don't know how to change things for the better.
Right, exactly. And so it's an ongoing process. When have you had your best races? When have you thought, this is it? Like, this is when it all makes sense, and can you replicate it?
So I think definitely my best races are always in speed, which, not shocking, I'm definitely a speed skier, but and they tend to be later in the season, which ends up working out really well for me in the games here. And I think my replication is, there's certain things I do every day. I have the same playlist on my phone, and no, it does not involve Kanye. If Spencer, I just had to, but it.
Hold on, you've got to explain that, because some of the people who are listening might not understand that Spencer is a huge Kanye fan, right?
A very aggressively huge Kanye fan, where we get it kind of pushed at us at least once a day when we're on the road. But but we have to make fun of him about it, and so it's kind of one of those things where but no, I mean, I have my same playlist, and I have kind of these same things that I do every day, and I have a routine on race day, and it involves me picking up the phone after inspection and calling my father and talking through things. And it's one of those weird, like, I don't think weird is the right word, but it's one of those things that's different between me and somebody else, that I have to do. And if I don't talk to him, then I tend to have a bad race, which, if you ask him, would have been evident yesterday when I got through 3 gates of a slalom and then crashed. So
What role has your father played for you? You said that he coaches you at home. What role has he played for you?
he's really he's my technical skiing guy. We ski 5-6 days a week when I'm home. He's my coach on the hill in training. He's the guy that taught me how to ski. He's the one that works through boots with me. He's the one that works through skis with me. That's actually why I'm currently sitting in the car, if you can't tell. We are driving to Vermont to do some ski testing tomorrow. So it's kind of he's kind of the person I can talk to and I talk things through with. And he's really been he's been the reason behind my success. And I honestly wouldn't be where I am today without him. And it makes me, I love being able to share where I am with him on a regular basis. And so he's just kind of my technique, I'm gonna call him my guru. He probably won't like that term, but that's what he is to me.
So how do these conversations go? You said that you do inspection, and then you get on your phone and you call your father. And this is from the US, this is from Europe,
it doesn't matter,
from Japan, from China.
It doesn't matter where in the world we are. I called him after inspection in Pyeongchang. It really doesn't matter where in the world I am. I will pick up the phone and call him. He will be up. I mean, we were just in St. Moritz, and it was 2:40 in the morning, 2:50 in the morning, and he would pick up the phone. Like, it's just how our relationship has, developed. And he was my coach before I made the team, that would go to races with me. So he knows how, we talk through race situations, and we talk through sets, and we talk through technical skiing on race day, and all those little things that
give me an example of, like, okay, so even like St. Moritz, you're racing in St. Moritz. You said you just had the slalom yesterday. How does that conversation go?
So usually I pick up the phone, he goes, "How you feeling this morning?" And I go, I'm ready to race. And then I say, the set is, 26 to 28 meters with medium to large offset. with this many delays, and he just says, and he tends to know where the hill is, and as he'll tell you, I'm a flatter hill skier, which is kind of concerning, but and we'll talk through, I'll talk through like the troublesome sections where I think I'm gonna have trouble, and then he'll say, you need to be forward and on the front of your ski here, or you're gonna end up blowing out, kind of situations, like that, and just the person who can give me words of advice when I need them in those situations.
So he's in some ways the one who is giving you those keys, those
Yeah.
there's always the key that kind of unlocks your skiing, that you might think about yourself, but you might not think about yourself. And so he's the reminder of that. Is that how it works?
Yeah, that's really how it works. And it's a lot of reminders of, this is what we've been working on in training, and this is what we've been working on in free skiing. So like, how to do it, so just go do it type of situation.
How did you become a speed skier? Were you always a speed junkie?
No, I grew up skiing slalom. I grew up in a small ski area where the most you probably could run was 38 GS, which as or 20 gate GS, which is not a lot of gates, especially as a J5. I mean, that's nothing if you think about it. And so when I was 15, I moved to Stratton, which is a little bit bigger mountain across from Bromley. And I started spending time in training and becoming friends with one current US ski teamer and one former US ski teamer who is still competing on the World Cup. And they both became one of the, she's a downhiller on the able body team now. And so they pushed me, and training Super G is one of those things where I realized I loved going fast, and I didn't want to stop, and I now ski Super G more than I ski anything else, which is it's a problem. But
and who are these people? I mean,
so George Seffy and Ali Merriweather, who George just raced in over the weekend in Alta Badia, and Ali unfortunately got hurt in training this spring, or this late summer, but they kind of pushed me to be where I am today. And they it's just one of those things where once you get to a bigger hill and you can start going fast, it's fun to go fast. And I had two of the best. One of my former coaches was a speed skier, like not a downhiller, but a actual speed skier, like those guys that like to go 250 kilometers an hour on skis
or whatever. Yeah.
And he's like, you like to go fast, like you're a downhiller. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And I resisted it for a long time. And then once I got on speed skis, and my first international Super G, I won a silver. I was like, okay, this is where I want to be. This is what I'm doing. And I love it.
And was that so international? Was that a NORAM, or was that a World Cup?
It was a national championship in Aspen, Colorado, right before the Sochi Paralympics. Ralph was one, I was two, Ralph Green was one, I was two, and then Ian Jansen was three. In Super G.
So right before Sochi. Okay.
Yep.
So this was a while ago. So this was a big breakthrough for you, because you were still pretty young kid then too.
Yep. So I was 16. And I went to Buttermilk, and it was my first experience in a speed race, and I had run Super G on the able body side, but it was never big boy big Super G. And I kind of caught the speed bug, and I've not looked back since. And really, in the last 2 years, Super G has become Super G and downhill. We don't run as much downhill as any of us would like, but have kind of become my things. And I love going fast and people will tell you I drive too fast in my car, I ride my bike too fast. It's kind of a thing now.
So does it fit you physically as well as mentally? I mean, it sounds like there's a mental setup, but physical, is that the case too?
Yeah, so most 9-1s are better speed skiers. It's the longer the turn, the less quick I need to move, the easier it is to go faster. And it's one of those things where I had this really, so going into last season, I lost 50 pounds of weight, which is still shocking to me in general. But before that, I was 230 and I was a downhiller, but I had to relearn what being a downhiller at 185 meant in bigger scheme of things. And for a little while, I was like, oh, I'm not going to love downhill as much anymore because I'm not going to be able to go as fast. And when I realized that Super G and downhill were almost more fun at 185 than they were at 230, I was like, I can still be a downhiller. Like this is where I am, and this is what I love to do.
And what are your biggest challenges? So longer turns are better for you. What are your biggest challenges?
My biggest challenge is the fact that my right leg doesn't collapse as quickly as somebody else's. So in slalom, I get caught on my left footers because I can't get my right foot out of the way, and then I'm stuck, and then it just kind of snowballs down the hill until I'm so far out that I blow up or I am slow because I have to throw them sideways to slow down to get it back to a position where I can actually ski it. As we're in downhill and Super G, I can just throw the ski, I can just go, and that's how it is.
Which is one of those things that's a little bit counterintuitive, right? So your issue is on your right side, but because your right side is less flexible than your left side, it makes it harder to make the turn with, as a ski racer, you're making your turn with the outside ski. So the ski that is away from the gate. So when you're making a left-footed turn, theoretically, that should be your better turn. But because your right leg doesn't flex, it keeps your left leg from actually making the good turn that it should be.
Exactly. And then I get stuck, and it's ugly, to say the least.
Wow. Okay. Now, what are the challenges on the other side? Like the challenges on your right ski when your right leg is your outside ski?
So the biggest challenge on that side is I don't trust it with 100% of my weight. And so there will be situations where I'll be in a turn going 50 plus miles an hour, and I end up being on my inside foot because I don't trust 100% that my right leg will hold me in that situation going that fast. And I end up releasing it a little bit, and then it slows me down. But that's that biggest, like, it's a big trust thing. It's a big mental game, is to know that I can trust that side through anything.
And that's the challenge, I would imagine, for you when you ski well, is when you're not banking into the hill, right? When you're getting that separation of upper and lower body, where your upper body is going down the hill, your hip is into the hill, and you're making the turn. But the safety mechanism is that I don't want to commit too much to this. So you kind of just tilt over. And when you're tilting over, you're inside and your weight is on your inside ski.
Yeah, exactly. So.
And that's the biggest challenge. Okay. What are you doing to combat that? I mean, obviously there's training, there's got to be a mental side of it.
Oh, there's 100% a mental side to it. And there's always the, it's the more I do it, the more I trust it kind of situation. 10,000 hours is a big thing that, you hear. And I 100% say it's true, because I learned how to ski. I'm going to say properly, because that's the only word I can think of right now. But I learned how to ski properly in my late teens. Like, I didn't really know what it meant to have upper body, lower body separation, be able to to get long and let the ski get away from you and all that stuff. Like that's still stuff I'm learning to this day. And I think the biggest thing is being able to trust every piece from your skis to your boots to your physical preparation in the summer, that it is all going to work out in the end.
Well, it's all going to work out in the end, but then you also have to contend with the conditions, right? So watching you from Pyeongchang, I think you were 24th in the GS in Pyeongchang.
Yeah.
And it was hard, but it was also, in some ways, it was that spring hard, right? Where it had been really warm during the day and then froze overnight. And so you get that rattly, hard snow.
It was 76 degrees today, the GS in Pyeongchang.
76. So it got really warm. It's not supposed to get that warm. Yes. No. And you don't really know what to expect though when you go to Beijing, do you?
No, not at all. This will be it'll be a new experience to say the least.
So when you're talking about some of these things, and we're talking about the physical, we're talking about the mental, you're talking about that you ride your bike, you look like, and you're actually doing it right now, you're anticipating my question. There's a bit of Michael Jordan going on with you, right? I mean, is your tongue part of your steering mechanism? How does this work?
It really is. You know, my tongue hangs out. It's a bad habit I have. I'm trying to break it, but yeah, my tongue kind of has to go out to. It kind of is like a gravitational pull situation. I don't know. You know, I'm supposed to wear a mouth
like you're
guard,
helping to steer.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be wearing a mouth guard, but don't tell anyone that I'm forget to put my mouth guard in on a regular basis. So.
What do your teammates say about your steering with your tongue issue?
Oh, there's a lot of jokes about it. I think it's actually a whole World Cup joke at this point. You know, there's a few new, you know, there's every year there's a few new racers, and I was riding up with one of the German guys the other day, and the German guy goes, "Oh yeah, you're the kid that skis with his tongue out." And I'm like, you're completely new on the World Cup and this is all you know about me? Like, how? You know, so it was entertainment to say the least when that was what was being talked about. I was like, oh, okay.
So are you okay with that's your differentiation, that's how people know you?
Yeah, you know, it's something that I've done since I was a little kid. I'm not going to change it now.
It works for you, the whole if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You said that the trip to St. Moritz was not exactly the trip that you were hoping for. Where are you in your preparation right now for Beijing and for qualifying for Beijing, right? Because you still have to qualify as well.
So the next big trip is the big one for qualifying for Beijing. It's world champs, and so if we podium at world champs, then we automatically make the games team. And I'm confident in where I am in my speed skiing. My GS is not quite where I want it to be. And then I think there's multiple factors playing into that. I think there's still some equipment things that we're trying to figure out, and there's still some technical skiing issues that are going on, and then I really skied the slalom on the last day in St. Moritz for the fun of it. I'm really trying to find the fun in slalom. I'm not a slalom skier. I don't love it. I struck a deal with coaches where I don't have to ski it all the time. And I won't be skiing it. I definitely won't be skiing it in Beijing no matter what, and I won't be skiing it at world champs. More than likely, mostly to have some rest days built in, and honestly, sometimes it's too hard to train everything. There's only so many days on snow.
It's funny because you quoted Belichick before that there are no days off. You went 43 days during the summertime of doing something, of training every single day. Is it actually helpful for your skiing to take a day off to give your body that rest?
As much as I hate to admit it, it is. You know, I can only do so much, and I think it's becoming more and more obvious in the world of ski racing that there aren't really a lot of athletes out there anymore that are skiing all 6 disciplines on the World Cup anymore. Even able-bodied. Michaela Schifrin's trying it this year. Didn't so much last year. Petra Vlhova tried it last year. Isn't so much this year. I think there's only so much time in a day and in a prep block on snow to really focus on everything, that you have to be selective sometimes with what you're training when you're training it.
What about physically though? Like for you, like with the spasticity and those kinds of things, does it alleviate some of the spasticity to be able to take a day off?
Yeah, it definitely does. And slalom, with it being quick twitch, is one of the things that adds more spasticity to the system, adds more lactic acid to the system, which tightens muscles up, which causes a lot more other issues. And so it's one of those things where, especially if there's slalom at the beginning, or the beginning of the trip than the end of a trip, it's a bigger struggle for me to ski it, because I know that it's going to be an uphill battle from skiing that slalom through to everything else, because everything's built up.
Right. And you really, at the games, it's set up so that you run downhill, super G, GS, slalom, but there's also the X factor of the weather, and slalom is a far easier race to run in more difficult weather conditions, if there's a lot of snow, if there's fog, than a downhill. So that that possibility is always there for you, that you might end up having to run some slalom. So you don't plan to run slalom. You'll run giant slalom, super G, and downhill most likely.
Yep. And
Is
super
it
combined.
and super combined? Okay,
I will
which means
do the run of slalom and super combined, but that will be probably the limit of my slalom skiing at the games.
okay. And is it, the faster you go, the more comfortable you feel like, or the better your chances are? So is downhill your best chance?
I think either super G or downhill is probably my best chance. I am more comfortable in super G than I am downhill at this point in time, but I haven't had that many days on my downhill skis till I had a couple days last year and a couple days the year before. I mean, we haven't trained all that much downhill in the last 2 years. I'm hopeful to get some days on my downhill skis before we go to Norway. Still working out the details. It's always an uphill battle for anyone to let you ski downhill anywhere at any time.
What are you running downhill on? How long are the skis that you're running downhill on?
So I run on pairs of 218 men's World Cup 50-meter downhill skis. Depending on the downhill set, I might run it on 40-meter super G skis, but more than likely the game set and the game set will be downhill, and Norway we'll see, but it'll be more than likely I'll be on 218-50s.
And what are your super Gs? You said they're 40-meter skis.
Yeah,
so
it's a 207-40, greater than 40.
Right, 40-meter skis. And is that where you feel comfortable? You've got those big skis underneath you that they feel solid. And
exactly, it's I feel like I can stand on that ski and bend it, and it will do what I want it to. I get on slalom skis, and I felt this the other day. I got on my slalom skis and I was like, these skis feel too short. Like, I feel like I'm gonna tip over at any moment on these skis. Like, I can ski it all I want, but like I still feel like I'm gonna tip over.
well, I mean, it's an interesting thing, because you said that you will run the super combined, which for you guys, is that a run of super G and a run of slalom?
Usually, yeah. I still think they can decide, but I think what I've heard is both world champs and the games are going to be super G this year.
Super G as opposed to downhill. And so
Yeah.
so oftentimes the super combined in the World Cup is that they run a downhill, a run of downhill, and a run of slalom. And sometimes you see those downhillers, and this might be the same case for you, where you see these big guys who have been making big turns and going off of big jumps, and they get on these short little skis, and it looks like they've stepped on a banana peel, and their
Oh
skis
yeah,
are suddenly
100%.
straight up over their head.
Yeah, no, 100%. I feel the same way every time I step on myself because I'm like, wait, can somebody teach me how to turn these things again? Like, I don't know what's happening.
What will this be like when you go to Beijing? So one, nobody outside of China has raced on this trail, on these courses. What's that going to be like?
I really think it's gonna be an experience in knowing our limits and knowing what we need to do in order to, we've seen POVs. I feel as prepared as I can be without actually have gone to a test event and actually tested the hill for the downhill. We'll have a free ski on the hill. We'll have a feeling of what the snow feels like. Um, I think it's a feel. You're gonna feel it out, and you're gonna see. It's gonna really depend on the set, and just depend on. It's gonna be a big mental game.
It'll be a big mental game, but one, you don't know what the set's going to be like. Two, you don't know what the hill's going to be like. I've read something about a 65-degree pitch somewhere, so there might be something that could be pretty darn steep. And you mentioned that you are a flat skier, so that might not exactly play into your hands. But then also snow conditions, because you really haven't skied in that part of the world to know what the snow conditions might be like. So the tuners, the coaches, the athletes, everybody's kind of scrambling when you get there. Is that something that you embrace, this idea of, you don't know it until you try it kind of
Well,
thing?
100%. We'll have a lot of, you know, I'll be talking to a lot of the able-bodied guys who will be there a month before us, and hearing what they have to say about it, and hearing what they have to say about the snow conditions, and our techs will be talking to their techs, and I think there'll be a lot. I think we will be more prepared than the Olympians at this point, because we will have had a chance to talk to people, and get the information.
Right, exactly. But it's also, the Paralympics start a month after the Olympics start. I mean, it's 2 weeks in between, but
Yeah.
it's a month. It's the 4th of February for the Olympics, and it's the 4th of March
Yeah.
for the Paralympics. And a month in a ski season can make a lot of difference in terms of the challenges or the conditions. So how are you approaching Beijing? I mean, hopefully, one, you've got to make the team, right? So what's the mindset for the season for you then?
My mindset is, let's ski as fast as we can whenever we can, and really see what comes out of it. And I think I think in Beijing it's going to be a whole different experience than normal games with COVID and the restrictions. I mean, we were talking about it as a World Cup in the last few days when we were together. It's like, we're really going to spend 2 out of the next 3 months together, contained in relatively small confines of villages or hotels. And it's we're gonna have to change things and see how things play out.
It's your job, right? I mean, it's your job. Your job is to go and compete, and effectively you're sequestered. Otherwise, your family won't get a chance to go, right?
No, that's the unfortunate thing. No families allowed in Beijing, which is sad, and it's upsetting and sad. And it was one of the things that made Pyeongchang so much fun, was that my mother did get to go, and I got to experience, I got to watch a gold medal hockey game in person with with her, and closing ceremonies and all that stuff around the games that I got to experience with her. And I I do not think that Beijing will be my last. We think of our lives in quads. We think of I got to plan 4 years in advance, and I do not think that Beijing will be my last games. I don't know where I'll be in 4 years, but I think I'll be around for another one, and hopefully we're back to a more normal situation than we are now. And I came back into I left 12 days ago to the United States, and it felt we were going back to a normal, and I've come back and it feels like we're back to March 2020 right now. So it's just interesting to kind of see how things are playing out.
It is. So 13 hours difference, Beijing to Foxborough. So when you're finishing your inspection, you're finishing your inspection 8 to 9 o'clock in the morning, something like that. So then so this is so your dad, that's nighttime for him, right?
Yeah.
So it actually works out not too badly.
No, so what he did in Korea was we talked after inspection. He went to bed, set an alarm for like 10 minutes before first run, got up, watched first run, went back to bed till I called him between runs, and then talked to me on the phone, and then went back to bed until I called him until he set an alarm for second run, and then went back to bed. So I don't know how it's going to be for Beijing. My mother has some plans for doing some stuff with family and stuff like that here in the East Coast, and FaceTime, and hopefully we have those conversations and that kind of stuff. So we'll see how it all works, but it'll definitely be another adventure that I'll be able to, in another country that I never thought I'd ever go to check off the list.
Well, it's more helpful if you're a speed skier for your father, because then that's only one run as opposed to 2 runs.
Exactly. So, he tends to like speed days better than non-speed days.
And you were recently engaged as well. How does this change your life?
It's a change of pace. I have to plan more family time into stuff, and I feel like I spend more time in the car these days just because I'm driving back and forth to Connecticut, but it really hasn't changed a lot. I love my fiance, and I love our 2 dogs very much, and they support me no matter what. One of our dogs likes to leave toys in my clothing bags when I leave. I will open been a few times been at home, a few times been in Europe, a few times been in Colorado, where I've opened my bag and there's been a dog toy in there. I'm like, I know exactly who put that in there. And he'll hide it perfectly so I can't find it. So it's not changed a lot, but at the same time, it's changed everything, and it's a balance that I have to find, and I think it's put more balance in my life that I didn't have before.
That makes perfect sense. I would imagine that when you find this dog toy in your bag, that it actually probably grounds you a little bit more, brings a smile to your face.
It does. Every time I'm like, Scruffy, come on, dude. But I love my little family that I have, and I can't wait till 2023 to marry my fiance. But at the same time, there's so much excitement and joy and so much fun to come that I'm excited to see it.
We've got to bring this back around to Foxborough, right? I mean, you're a ski racer. We're going to bring it back to Foxborough. Day after Christmas, there's a big game with Buffalo. How's that going to go?
It's going. Patriots are going to win it. It's going to be a hard battle, but I think the Patriots. I'm predicting a playoff berth here pretty soon, and I've been team over Brady since the beginning, and we'll go from there. But I was lucky enough to one of our neighbors for a number of years during the second big playoff, the big Super Bowl run was defensive line coach of the Patriots. He has since moved on and to Kansas City and been part of 2 more Super Bowl runs. But it was always fun to hang out with them and, get the experience and be around that and have, I am so lucky to grow up in a town where we have something that's been so good, and I love football. Like, football is the one thing in Europe I will wake up at 2 a.m. to watch on a regular basis. It's an addiction that I probably need to fix, but that's beyond the point.
That is awesome. And you find places where you can watch football in Europe.
VPNs and Paramount Plus come in very handy.
Perfect. Well, Connor, thanks so much for joining us. I know that you were off to Vermont to go test some skis, to get ready to go ski with your guru, with your dad. So enjoy your time with your dad. Thanks for joining us. Good luck this year. I look forward to seeing you at World Champs and then also at the Paralympics.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Total pleasure. Thank you to all of you for tuning in. If you didn't get a chance to see the whole thing, it will be on the One Revolution page on Facebook. All this and all of the interviews that we've done are archived there. It will be a regular podcast, YouTube, Apple, Spotify. The greatest gift you can give us, this is the holiday season, right, is to tell your friends about these interviews, these podcasts, and certainly follow us, like us, and share it with your friends. Happy holidays to everyone out there. Connor, thanks a ton, and we'll look forward to seeing you go fast.
Thanks.